Carlos Coa Silva navigated the throngs of spectators pouring into the Olympic Park's green zone, his custom drone case slung over one shoulder like a sacred relic. Streamers, flags, and the clamor of multiple languages filled the humid air under Rio's late afternoon sun. He had arrived hours before the closing ceremony, clutching his FAA-approved drone pilot credential and a stamped permit from Brazil's ANAC, certain that this year's finale would feature his most ambitious aerial light show yet. Approaching the credential checkpoint, where uniformed security officers vetted every credential and scanned every bag, Coa felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He offered his permit with a confident smile. The officer, a stern man with mirrored sunglasses, examined the laminated badge, then flicked his gaze to the black phone-lined case at Coa's side. "Drone?" he asked, voice clipped. Coa nodded, ready to explain the full concept, a Rings of Light choreography arching above Maracana Stadium, syncing with the final song. The officer's expression hardened. He tapped on a handheld console that glowed with "Anodronezone" in bold letters. "All drones are prohibited in Olympic Park airspace for security reasons," he said, returning the permit. "You must leave the drone here or take it outside the perimeter." Coa's heart sank. "But my permit," he began, but the officer cut him off. "No exceptions. Pick up after the event." As the officer stepped aside to admit a line of VIPs, Coa stood frozen on the sidewalk, watching families, influencers, and broadcasters flood past him toward the arena gates. He felt invisible among the sea of color and excitement, his dreams grounded by a single red-letter rule. The drone case in his hand suddenly felt impossibly heavy. After a long moment, Coa exhaled, sliding his fingers along the case's latch. He tucked the permit back into his pocket and pivoted away from the gleaming Olympic banners, determination sparking behind his disappointment. If the Green Zone would not host his light show, then he would find another stage, one where the sky above Rio would still glow to the rhythm of his vision. That evening, under the flickering sodium lamps of a tucked-away maintenance shed behind the media center, Coa Silva and his two closest collaborators, Mariana Campos and Tito Ferreira, set to work transforming the grounded drone into an unrecognizable marvel. The shed's corrugated metal walls rattled with the distant thrum of final ceremony rehearsals, but inside, the trio moved with laser focus. Mariana, draped in a utility vest bristling with USB sticks and microcontrollers, pulled open the drone's top shell. The ring of programmable LEDs that normally traced polite circles around the frame now lay exposed like mechanical petals. With nimble fingers, she resoldered each LED's data line to a custom driver board of her own design, one capable of pulsing 10 times brighter and shifting through millions of hues without a hitch. Meanwhile, Tito crouched by the open case of control electronics, a soldering iron humming in his right hand. He removed the factory-installed GPS module and replaced it with a stealth GPS spoofing unit, barely larger than his thumbnail but powerful enough to confuse the stadium's no-fly geofencing. He tucked the module beneath the frame's carbon fiber ribs, routing the antenna wire through a hollow landing strut so that the hack would remain invisible to cursory inspection. At the back of the shed, Coa examined the drone's radio frequency board. He carefully pried off its shielding cover and swapped the stock power amplifier for Tito's custom RF bypass, granting the drone the ability to slip past the Olympic drone jamming network. Sweat beaded on his brow as he soldered the fine traces, each connection crucial to ensuring the drone's private control channel would hold in the crowded airwaves above Rio. Once the hardware rewiring was complete, Mariana opened her laptop and uploaded a fresh flight path file. The code animated swirling spirals and expanding rings, an intricate ballet of light designed to bloom above Maracana Stadium. She tested the sequence in simulation mode, watching as a 3D model of the stadium was bathed in emerald green, sunrise gold, and ocean blue. Tito loaded the drone's firmware, embedding a buried wake-on radio command that Coa could trigger from beyond the park's perimeter. He secured a microSD card containing backup flight instructions and emergency landing protocols, ensuring that if the primary link failed, the drone would autonomously return to their riverside launch point. By 11 p.m., the trio stood back, their work complete. Under the harsh shed light, the once ordinary quadcopter now resembled a futuristic starship, its LED ring glowed softly in standby mode, the carbon fiber frame gleaming with fresh solder joints, and the stealth antennas folded flush against its body. As they packed their tools, Koa inhaled the musty air, feeling both exhilaration and apprehension. Tomorrow, the sky above Rio would bear his unlicensed masterpiece, and nothing, not even Olympic security, could hold it down. By 11:45 that night, Rio City lights shimmered across the still surface of Lagoa Rodrigo de Freitas as Carlos Coa Silva, Mariana Campos, and Tito Ferreira slipped past the final row of sleeping security tents. They carried only black duffel bags and their rigger's confidence. At the tip of the concrete pier, a narrow spit of land jutting into the water, they laid out the drone on a fold-out mat, the ring of resoldered LEDs gleaming like a mechanical halo. Koa powered up the drone's battery pack with a soft click. The LEDs pulsed to life in dim emerald before fading to standby. Tito tapped the custom RF bypass switch, then tested the remote transmitter's hidden frequency banks. "Signal clear," he murmured, watching the controller's gauge settle firmly in the green zone. Mariana loaded the final flight script onto the drone's onboard microcontroller, her fingers flying over the touchscreen as a 3D map of Maracana Stadium appeared on her tablet, complete with geofenced exclusion zones now quietly spoofed out of the equation. Mariana gave the countdown. 3, 2, 1. Koa squeezed the throttle. The rotors whirred in a quiet hum, and the drone lifted smoothly above the pier's edge. Below, water lapped softly. Above, the city's nocturnal buzz receded as the craft climbed into the humid night air. They watched on their screens as the drone reached cruising altitude, approximately 200 meters, and hovered momentarily. Then, on Mariana's signal, it darted forward toward the stadium, its GPS coordinates shifted by the spoofing module so that any official air traffic monitors would register it miles away, over a deserted industrial district. From the pier, Koa tracked the drone's ascent on his FPV goggles. Tiny points of light, the revamped LEDs, blossomed against the dark sky like distant stars. He could make out the sleek carbon fiber arms cutting clean lines through the night air. Each programmed waypoint glowed on his screen: Spiral A here, Circle B there, Infinity C above the south stands. Moments later, Mariana whispered, "We're in position." From the piercing calm of the lagoon's edge, the first LED patterns erupted over Maracana's silhouette, a ring of electric blue expanding outward, followed by concentric waves of green and gold that pulsed to an inaudible rhythm. On their screens, the stadium's floodlights wavered in awe, as if unsure what vision had commandeered the sky. Koa exhaled in triumph, yet kept one finger on the emergency return switch. Tito monitored the RF spectrum to ensure no jamming pulses cut through. Mariana watched the battery gauge, its needle steady above 90%. Below them, the city's heartbeat quickened as passengers spilling from the green zone squinted at the unexpected spectacle overhead. In those tense first minutes, Koa felt the weight of every clandestine modification: the spoofed GPS that had betrayed official maps, the amplified LEDs defying the Olympic blackout, and the stealth RF bypass that communicated freely where authority forbade. But as the drone began its programmed dance, spinning rings, blossoming fractals, and the unmistakable outline of Brazil's green and gold, their gamble crystallized into art. The closing ceremony's crescendo played beneath them, but the real climax belonged to a trio of innovators on a hidden pier, their creation now lighting the Copa's sky for millions to behold. As the closing ceremony fireworks faded into the humid Rio night, an unexpected glow appeared above Maracana Stadium. At first, spectators thought it part of the official show, until dozens of brilliant LED halos began to pulse and drift across the sky like ghostly jellyfish. In the stands, a hush fell. Families clutching Brazilian flags tilted their heads back in wonder, security guards paused mid-stride, photographers lowered their cameras, eyes wide as the unlicensed spectacle unfolded. The drone's first pattern, a perfect ring of icy blue, hovered silently above the stadium's floodlights. Then, in a single, fluid motion, the ring split into 5 interlocking circles, each spinning in opposite directions to form the Olympic emblem in shimmering green, yellow, and azure. Gasps rippled through the crowd. On the pitch below, closing ceremony performers froze mid-dance, their sequined costumes reflecting the drone's light. The stadium's giant LED screens, set up for the ceremony's broadcast, caught the signal and seamlessly cut from the choreographed program to a live feed of the drone's aerial ballet. Commentators' voices crackled in surprise. "We have an unscheduled aerial display. It's the Olympic rings, again." Across the globe, millions watched live as the broadcast feed cut to the sky over Rio. In New York, late-night talk shows interrupted their scripts to marvel at the rogue light show. In Tokyo, commuters on the Yamanote line peeked at smartphone screens, mouths agape. In Sydney, a late-night film festival audience paused their popcorn, eyes glued to the unexpected cinema in the heavens. Back in the stands, the drone shifted to its next tableau, the outline of Brazil, its contours traced in glowing gold, then filled with a pulsing emerald fill that looked like a matrix of data streams. Above each of the country's major cities, São Paulo, Salvador, Fortaleza, tiny pinpoints of white light blinked in succession, symbolizing unity and connectedness. A spontaneous cheer erupted, swelling into a roar that rivaled any official anthem. Koa, monitoring the feed from the lagoon pier, saw his creation transcend mere technology. Mariana whispered to Tito, "They're reacting exactly as we hoped." On his controller, Koa initiated the finale sequence, an expanding spiral of lights that accelerated in tempo, synchronizing perfectly with the Olympic theme music still echoing faintly from the stadium's speakers. As the spiral reached its apex, the LEDs exploded outward in a supernova of color, emerald, gold, sapphire, and crimson, before dissolving into a shower of sparkling pinpoints that drifted lazily toward the horizon. For a breathless moment, the sky held only the stars and the stunned silence of millions who had witnessed a banned drone transform an entire arena into a canvas of collective wonder. Then, as if on cue, the stadium lights blazed back to life. The closing ceremony resumed, but the energy had shifted. Every athlete, every dignitary, and every fan carried the memory of that rogue moment, forever changed by the knowledge that art, and defiance, could unite the world in a single, unforgettable breath. By the time the first social media posts of the unsanctioned light show went live, Rio's Olympic Park was an uproarious celebration. Within minutes, #LoseDeRio was trending worldwide, and the official Olympic broadcast had cut to a split screen showing both the stadium and the riverside pier from which the drone had launched. Inside Maracana, security chiefs huddled in the control room, fury mixing with awe as they replayed footage of Koa's choreography. One commander barked into his headset, "Lock down the airspace. Scramble the jammers." Yet the drone remained impervious to their signal suppression, its custom RF bypass silently shrugging off the attack. Meanwhile, performers on the field realized their last dance sequence had been reframed by Koa's celestial interlude. The headline act, a samba troupe clad in golden plumes, paused in mid-step, faces lifted toward the sky as if seeking inspiration from the unbidden light. In that suspended beat, Rio's indomitable spirit found new expression. The audience rose, chanting "Ol! Ol!" in a spontaneous wave that rippled across every section of the stands. Broadcast trucks mobilized on the stadium's perimeter, rerouting live feeds to capture this historic moment. A French commentator exclaimed, "Mesdames et messieurs, jamais has a banned drone stolen the Olympic thunder so spectacularly." In Tokyo, a late-night news anchor pressed pause on a Formula One recap to show the Brazilian display in full. Viewers on the Shibuya crossing giant screens craned their necks, transfixed. Back at the lagoon, Koa's phone buzzed with alerts, heart-fluttering messages from Brahma Brewery executives offering sponsorship, a New York Times reporter begging for an interview, and even a conciliatory text from the Olympic security chief, "Well played. Let's talk tomorrow." Koa exhaled a laugh he hadn't realized he'd been holding. As the final fireworks faded and the stadium lights dimmed to signal the true end of the closing ceremony, millions around the globe carried the memory of those 5 interlocking rings and the country glowing in emerald green. Rio had reclaimed its skies, and its story, affirming that innovation, when guided by passion and technical prowess, can transform a moment of exclusion into a celebration of collective unity. In that electric aftermath, Koa knew his banned drone had done more than put on a show. It had rewritten the narrative of what was possible, uniting millions under a shared canopy of light, defiance, and pride. By the time Carlos Koa Silva guided his drone back to the pier, the echo of cheers from Maracana still vibrated through the humid night air. The craft settled onto the concrete as Koa cut its motors and lifted his goggles. Beside him, Mariana and Tito exhaled in relief, their faces lit by the drone's fading LED glow. Almost instantly, flashlights bobbed toward them. Olympic security officers, now fully aware of what had transpired, surrounded the pier with stern expressions. One of them, Lieutenant Ramos, stepped forward, his radio crackling with after-action reports. "Hands up," he said, voice low but insistent. "Step away from the drone and the controller." Koa set the remote gently on a nearby box and raised his hands, his heart thundering. He met Ramos's gaze without flinching. "Lieutenant," he said, voice calm despite the adrenaline, "I followed all the regulations I had, proper certification, sanctioned airspace clearance from ANAC. But here, I was grounded. Tonight, I gave this city a gift its people needed." Ramos's jaw tensed as he glanced at the gathering officers. Behind him, Mariana quietly retracted signal jamming gear from the drone's frame, and Tito packed away the GPS spoofing module. The lieutenants barked orders to secure the device, but Koa raised a hand to forestall rough treatment. "We're not trying to hide," Koa continued, stepping toward Ramos. "I flew over the lagoon because that's public airspace. I didn't endanger anyone, I synchronized with fireworks and the ceremony, and I kept well clear of the performers." His words hung in the thick tropical air. Ramos radioed an inquiry and then lowered his voice. "Sir," he said, "we've reviewed the global livestream. That display was unprecedented, and the crowd loved it." He glanced back at the officers, whose expressions flickered between duty and astonishment. "The IOC rules are clear, but the public reaction." A murmur of agreement rippled through the security team. Ramos exhaled and turned back to Koa. "Your license is valid." "I'm under orders to impound the aircraft and detain the operator," he said. He hesitated, then added quietly, "But higher UPS are watching this, and they want to know who you are." Koa nodded and reached for the controller, but Ramos stopped him, a gesture not of authority but of respect. "You landed it safely," the lieutenant said, "and you returned it intact. Leave the controller here for now. We'll sort this out at headquarters." Mariana and Tito approached, helping Koa fold up the drone's arms. The three exchanged a look of guarded triumph. Around them, festival staff and late-night joggers paused to watch, their faces alight with pride rather than reprimand. As Ramos shepherded them off the pier, he handed back the controller. "Go on," he said, voice low enough so only Koa could hear. "You've earned this moment." Koa cradled the remote in his hands, once a symbol of restrictions, now a tool of unity. He nodded his thanks and walked away from the pier beneath the street lamps, flanked by Mariana and Tito. Above them, the sky still held faint traces of his drone's final spiral. In that quiet exodus, Koa realized he had not only defied a rule but had transformed defiance into celebration, earning the respect of even those sworn to ground him.